Hello, leader. Welcome back to episode 190 of the Fierce Factor podcast. It's your host, Kaeli here, bringing you an incredible gift. Let me tell you, I have for you two inspiring and intentional business leaders in this week's podcast. Today, I'm interviewing Katie Speaks and Delaney Poor, co-founder and intrapreneur of Beyond Skin Aesthetics based out of Gahanna, Ohio. I hope I didn't butcher that. So a little backstory I'll share. I happened to be sitting at the same table as these two lovely women at lunch at a conference this year. And the whole table was sort of having this conversation about disgruntled employees and ultimately employees who were becoming entitled and competitive over the commissions they were earning as providers for their sales goals. And it was this totally unanimous tone that these employees were difficult to work with because they were so focused on their own earning potential. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, the irony, how we as owners and leaders, right? We hire people, we show them that their path to success is to be hungry, to sell. And then we feel resentful that they're doing their job and expecting what was promised to them. And I was sort of having this thought go through my head and more of just kind of hearing people out. And from across the table, these ladies spoke up and addressed the huge elephant in the room confidently, stating that the problem is less about the employee and more about the culture that the business owner has designed by incentivizing through commissions. And I was so intrigued by this confident statement that I began to ask them about their business, what success looks like for them, what motivates employees without commissionable earning potential, and how they build their culture in their practice and hit their sales goals. Well, that conversation was so enlightening that I asked them to come and share with all of you here on the Fierce Factor. And so in this episode, you will hear some game-changing pearls that truly synthesize the entire philosophy of a life-first business, not just for its owners, but also for its employees who ultimately are the people driving the business. So you'll hear what an inside-out growth framework looks like, how the hiring and onboarding process is crucial to the long-term success of an employee. And my personal favorite part of this interview, the raw perspective of a daughter of a serial business owner who lived the life as with a very busy working mom and how she ultimately developed her own perspective as an adult of what it was like having a mom who was busy building an aesthetic practice. So I just loved this interview with Katie and Delaney, and I can't wait for you to take this really truly a masterclass on building a thriving culture. Enjoy. Hi there. Welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaeli Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. Hello, Fierce Factor podcast listeners, and hello to my incredible guests, Delaney and Katie. I'm super excited to have you here to join me for this episode. We have been waiting months to record together. Just to give a little bit of context about why I asked you guys to come on the podcast is we had a really interesting conversation by chance at a random big 12-person table at lunch at the Aesthetic Next conference in Dallas. And I think somebody at the table was talking about frustration around team and employees, and this really outgoing, beautiful blonde across the table just started talking about, well, here's how we do it. Here's how our practice runs so smoothly. Here's how everybody pitches in. And she was just describing this dream business. And I said to her, Delaney, you must be the owner of the business. And she said, no, this is the owner here. I pointed to Katie. And I was like, wait a minute. I think this is like dream come true. It's like dynamic duo. We had such an enriching and valuable and exciting conversation that I was like, okay, hold up, guys. Before we all left from the table, I think we had like people in tears. We had other women getting your guys' business cards. So we had all kinds of like stuff going on. And I said, we have to bring this conversation that I think a lot of people are having internally, but not so much publicly, about what really creates a strong culture in a business and how compensation essentially fits into that, folds into that picture. So I am so excited to welcome both of you, Katie and Delaney, to the podcast. And so let's start off by telling the listeners a little bit about your practice Beyond Skin Aesthetics and your roles within the practice.
Absolutely. We'll just start out with who we are. We are a medical aesthetics practice that definitely focuses on the overall wellness of the entire body. Everyone who walks through our door is welcome. We want to make sure that whatever they aren't feeling confident about, that it is our mission to help them build up that confidence any way that we possibly can.
Absolutely. So we do aesthetic medicine. We do wellness. Honestly, some days we are their therapists that are talking through things. Every person that walks through our door, we want them to feel like they are a part of our family. And we always say that we are a family-owned and operated business, even though we are not all related, because we want that to be our company and our culture. And that's really what our brand has become, is that family dynamic. And you're welcomed into our family to join us.
We spend a lot of time here. You're walking into our home and we want you to feel welcome into our home, whatever that means for our patient.
Well, I love that. That makes me want to be in Ohio, right? I feel like whatever I need, Beyond Skin has got me covered for sure. Talk to me about each of your roles and in the practice.
So we don't like to have necessarily
titles.
Yes, titles. We don't do titles because technically I am a co-founder. So there's 4 of us that found Beyond Skin Aesthetics, but that doesn't mean that I'm any different than Delaney. I am a skin expert also, but then in the grand scheme of things, we're also going to take out the trash at the end of the day, and we're going to make sure that everybody is taken care of. So we all hold every single role.
We all wear many hats for sure. So I am a skin expert as well. And I oversee a lot of our marketing and more of our social media, PR side of things. I actually started working for the Walt Disney Company right out of college. So that bubbliness and that customer service definitely comes out. So a lot of times, you're right. So a lot of times, especially when we do have new people coming in, I am helping with training and implementing that kind of Mickey Mouse way, we'll say, of customer service, bringing that all in. So we all wear many hats, but we all then also have our strengths that we lean on each other to be that expert in that area for.
Okay, this is amazing. So everyone is a skin expert with a certain specialty, basically.
Yes.
So Katie, when you founded the company, was this sort of like a decision that you and your founder said, this is how we want to run the business? Or is that something that's evolved for you guys?
It, of course, has evolved. We first formed it in early of 2017. And there's 2 physicians and Kim, who is also an owner, who just happens to be Delaney's mom as well. But when we formed the business, we were all in regular medicine. So we all had ancillary care jobs, bedside jobs, that we were looking at something that we could create our own culture. And we wanted to create the environment that we wanted to go into every single day. And it's evolved over time.
When the doors first opened, it was 1 room, and then that grew to 4 rooms. And then we just recently actually opened our brand new office in March, where we went to 12 rooms. So we have gone through major expansion, pretty much quadrupling every time that we have moved.
Yeah.
And that culture has really followed us through, but evolved and grown into even a stronger culture as we have grown over the last, was it 6-7 years?
Whatever that calculates out to be, right?
Something around there.
Yeah.
Amazing. Congratulations. We keep using the word culture, right? And culture is so interesting to me because it's something that's barely teachable in a sense, because there isn't a specific formula to it, but it's, and many times, the core foundational element. I mean, it's what underpins everybody's, I guess, passion and energy and alignment for being a part of a company. So let's sort of just set the baseline here of what does culture mean to you guys? What is a culture in the sense that this is something that we strive for?
I think the foundation of it is balance and autonomy. That is our core foundation. And then we can build from there.
And we really, when we look at what we want our culture to be, it is what are others perceiving us as when they walk through our doors? What kind of aura do we have per se? Is it something where they feel like it's a welcoming environment? what does that look like for us working in the day to day? Obviously, we all spend a lot of time here. So what kind of workplace do we want to work in? What kind of place are we building to welcome others into? If we're looking at it as our home, what kind of environment is our home? And we kind of break it down from there.
And we're a team. Yes, we all have individual strengths, but we all can lift each other up as that team. It's not individualized. So we are a medical team that we work together and we create the best outcome for our patients. It's not one person is creating, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but almost like that individualized treatment plan or customized treatment plan. We are looking at the entire body and we are bringing in our physicians, our nurse practitioner. Delaney and I come in together and we work together as that team so that we can really give that patient the best outcome. So our culture is all team-based. It's not individual.
Yeah, one goal. We go into it as one team, one goal, and we kind of set what that looks like and we all work towards that goal together. But then we all have our separate goals that we build each other up for at the same time.
Okay, so you talked about balance and autonomy. Can you touch on what that means really quick? Because I'm so curious.
The way that we came up with balance and autonomy is everybody did a self-reflection of what they wanted. So what balance looks like for me is going to look different for Delaney, but we need to be open with everybody of what our personal balance is and how we can help each other. So it's almost like a self-reflection. We have to fill up our cup before we can fill up other people's cups.
Yes. So like as in balance, like work-life balance.
Absolutely.
Or individualized version of success.
Yes.
I think that even sometimes comes into our office doors too. So that might even be a work balance where do you have a professional goal that you're trying to reach, but you have tasks that you might not absolutely love to do. And we're going to help you balance that where you're happy when you're here, but also what does that look like just in your life as a whole? Is your goal right now to build your profession, or is your goal right now that you have little ones at home, or you have some that are about to go off to college, or you have some that are post-college that you want to go and visit a couple of times a year? What does that look like for each individual person, and working together so that we can support each other to have that life first workplace in a way?
Okay. So when I was in college, I waited tables at this like amazing breakfast spot on the water. It's famous near my home. And we pooled tips, right? And of course, I worked my butt off because I cared. But there were definitely girls that were coming in hungover, that weren't pulling their weight. And it was very frustrating. So I'm sort of having a flashback to that experience as you guys are talking about like, oh, maybe someone wants to focus on their home life right now. But like, doesn't the business have goals? What do you do when someone's not pulling their weight?
That's a great question. Do you want to answer this one?
I'll let you take that one.
Really, we look at our culture into three pieces. And that is what are personal goals, what are professional goals, meaning what goals do we have set as a team, and then what are our life goals. And that's kind of how we set our success spectrum. So it's kind of when you think of a marriage, there might be moments where Katie is at 90% and I'm at 10%. But then there might be moments where that flip-flops. There might be moments where we are each giving 50-50, but we make sure that we work together and we go back to really those three pillars. If we are not making our personal goals that we've set for ourselves, we as a team come together of, okay, what can you do personally? What can we do as a team to help support you? If we're not reaching our team goal together, okay, we overall are a business. We do have to make money. There is that end goal. So if we're not making that checkpoint, what do we have to do together? It doesn't necessarily fall as checks and balances of, well, I'm doing more of this and you're doing less of this, but we work together of, okay, what do we have to do to get to that? And if that kind of vibe is off, okay, is there something else going on? Do you feel like your life is a little bit out of balance? How do we get that back into check? Sometimes it can feel like a circus act as you're just running in circles trying to balance it all. But we have found over the years, and of course, this culture and this teamwork has evolved throughout the years, but we have found over the years by working together, we're a lot more successful in having that balance individually. So we try to just bring it back to those three things and really stay focused.
That's amazing. So
I have a lot to digest.
Bring it back. No, this is great. I'm remembering our convo now from lunch. Okay. Because Well, then insert, right? Like 4 other providers sitting at the table who are like, not possible. You guys are living in dreamland, right? And I think the more practical question is, though, certainly the business has to stay in business and there has to be, we've talked about goals, right? Your example of when we're looking at culture, and culture is something that I would say is difficult to measure because we really don't know how to, right? So anchoring back to core values and trying to hold team members accountable to those. And what you're telling me is that we're looking at, first of all, personal goals within the business, right? Team goals, and then life goals as well. So you're actually holding people accountable to them, I guess, bettering themselves as human beings, essentially. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it's that delicate balance of if you're happy outside of work, you're going to be happy at work and vice versa. And we want everybody to want to come into work every single day and enjoy being here. We want their family members to come here. What our nurse practitioner, Alicia, and myself, we have young daughters. And so you might see our young daughters on our Instagram, or if they don't have school that day, they're going to be here maybe helping stock the rooms because it's a family business.
I'm curious, how would you rate, each of you answer for yourselves, your work-life balance on a scale of 1 as it sucks to a 10 as in it's amazing?
Oh gosh. I think that's definitely something that we are ever working towards because we can say this is what we do and we do act these things out day in and day out. But of course, we're not perfect. The plan is not perfect. Things go awry. I think we try to remember that we're all human and that also centers us back. I would say it ebbs and flows. It ebbs and flows with what's going on. So like for me, my work-life balance felt totally right because I just got married last month. So for me, I was way more focused on my personal life, trying to get all that together. So I had Katie to kind of help pick up the slack on that side. On, I feel like a normal day, I would say I'm an 8 out of 10. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but I would say that on a normal day, I have balance. I don't know if you feel the same.
I do not have a great balance when it comes to work-life balance because
employee.
But I also feel like listening to a podcast. Yes, I'm learning by listening to your podcast, Kaeli. And so if I'm at home cleaning, listening to this podcast or driving, I'm going to stop and write all stuff down and then see how we can implement something that we just listened to, or I need to go back and listen to this again. So
it's an entrepreneurial mindset.
Yes.
And for all female leaders everywhere, I think we can agree that your mind constantly goes and you find these inspirations that we now call it our brain books, but we all have a notebook or a planner that we can write down ideas. And it has helped us to kind of delegate out these moments where we can let it go and we don't focus on it outside of the office. We can bring it back into the office because it is a constant game of inspiration and what can we do next? How do we get that cutting edge? How can we constantly be better? Sometimes that can be absolutely exhausting. Something that we have really started talking about recently in the last couple of months is how do we unplug when we are not here? Mm-hmm. And how do we find more of that balance where we're turning off? Especially speaking for Katie and my mom, who I spent out of the 4 co-founders, I spend the most time with the 2 of them, obviously. And for them, even when we would all be on vacation together, they would still be working. They would still be thinking of things. So by having that delegated time to really unplug and just reset allows that fresh creativity to constantly be going versus hitting that burnout. Because that is something that we all have fallen into.
Well, I will say too, Katie, and I was curious because I just went through every client we take on, we ask that question. We ask a series of questions. We ask them to rate their love for their business on a 1 to 10, how strong their team is on a 1 to 10, and their work-life balance on a 1 to 10. So I just pulled up like one I looked at this morning, and this is pretty indicative always is love my business is a 10, team is a 6, work-life balance is a 2, from no balance to highly balanced. And so I think I asked that question because I know somebody listening is like, okay, this sounds like everything is like, okay, well, I'm tired. I'm going home, loosey-goosey, all those things. But probably I would surmise is that if you're creating an environment where you love being at work, the balance of probably energy, effort, time that you spend there may outweigh what you spend at home because you love it and it excites you and thrills you.
It feels different. That's a really, really good point. I think when I wasn't 100% dialed into work, I felt like I had less of a balance. But because I am so inspired to be here and I genuinely like being with the people that I work with and the things that I do, I don't feel that burnout. I feel more balanced. I might not actually be as balanced if I didn't have that drive at the moment. It's probably an ebb and flow.
We had a really long work day on Friday. We came home and then we found there were 4 of us that were texting for 2 hours on this big group chat. It's like, wait a second, we just literally spent the entire day together and we were talking about pickles being a big deal.
It had no context whatsoever. It was not business, but we were still talking to each other.
Yes, so we are each other's chosen family.
Yeah.
And I'll go home and my daughter will be like, Mom, I thought of this great idea for Instagram. And I'm like, this is fantastic. I have a 9-year-old that's thinking that I just got Instagram.
Yeah. So, Kaeli, do you think that it's more of feeling that burnout with the work-life balance being awry, or true, just straight as it is work-life balance? Like, do you think that perceptions kind of weigh depending on where your priorities are?
Everything to me is about perception. So like that actually doesn't tell me a lot about your life, except for the way that you perceive your life, right? So those questions I ask are, tell me why. Because you listened to Lexi, right? We talked about Lexi Yu and her podcast, and she's got 2 kids. She's running her empire, her training academy, huge team. She's got her husband, which is like kid number 3 always, we know how it goes. And she's like, look, you have to resource yourself. Like we can all feel like we have too much on our plate, or we can resource ourselves and get support with the things that maybe don't fill our cup, right? Or fuel us as much and spend more time doing the other. So the burnout comes when we feel like we're a victim to it. We don't feel like there's an out. And essentially, I think that's the thing. So to the point of like probably for Katie and Delaney for Kim, right? Where these are 2 female founders that go on vacation. And suddenly when you get out of the workplace and you open yourself up into a more expansive environment, that's kind of when the downloads come, where you're in a place to access that creative thinking. And that's like a pleasure. Like I would rather sit and journal on vacation about my business strategy for the next year than I would read like a romance novel or something. It's just, that is what excites me.
Creative fire.
Yes.
Yeah. I think too, just from watching my mom for so many years. So my mom and Katie have worked together since I was 11. So we really have grown up together physically and professionally. Mm-hmm. And from watching the 2 of them, but especially my mom, since I was very, very young, and she was an entrepreneur, she had to get past the guilt for not being in the office and not thinking about it and balance that out of am I being creative and taking time for myself? Or should I be in the office? Because if I'm not working, nobody's working. That's a tough thing too, of if you can let yourself fall into that creative time, it can be the most fire lit part of your business.
Yeah, we just had our leadership retreat this past week. And part of the reason I do that is let's test your business. Can you get away for 5 days? You can see who's like, everything's good. And like who has to spend time at the spa with their laptop open. There's nothing wrong either way. It's a litmus test for yourself to say, am I where I want to be? I think that's great. So Delaney, let's like talk about that mom guilt from your perspective as a daughter who had a mom running a business and building her empire. How is that for you now as an adult? You can look back and see you had that mom. How do you feel now about your relationship with your mother?
Oh my gosh, it made it so much better. And I say that all the time, especially to Katie when she's like, okay, but like, what does Vera think on the back end? And our relationship is so much stronger because of that. Not only did I learn my work ethic from her, because I think that's the easiest cop out of an explanation of why moms are working, or that's the explanation they have in their head, but secretly they don't believe that themselves. Outside of that, I saw a woman that believed in herself start from scratch and build something and find quality people that are around her and build it. And I didn't choose Katie to be, I call her my fairy godmother. And I didn't choose her to be my fairy godmother. She came into my life when I was 11. And that is something that my mom hired her on when they were working at a different practice. There are pieces there where I see so much growth and respect as a person in her that she has then turned around and been able to pour into me. And she's been able to lead by example. And I truly don't think if I did not watch her go through all of the trials and go through the burnout and the inspiration and the Saturdays where she has her headphones in listening to a podcast and she's writing while she's cleaning the house, or she throws out these random ideas, I don't think that I would have the same passion and desire and truly belief in myself that I could go and do it too. And it is turning around that way. And what's really cool, not to totally make it all about the two of us here, what's really cool is my mom actually was raised by a mother who for most of her childhood was a single mother and had we call it her salon that was in Florida, but I'm really a third generation beauty entrepreneur at this point that's building it. So seeing how my mom learned from her mom and got so many things built off of that and is now pouring those things into me and really in turn pouring it into Katie and I so that we can build this up and we can pour it into our kids then. What we are doing may seem so materialistic and stuck right where we are today, but it goes so much further than where we are today. We're building truly a legacy, whether our children go into aesthetics or do something else. We're building that spirit of you can do anything that you set your mind to. And beyond that, you're going to face trials and this is how you get through them, or this is how you carry yourself through them when you get there. You don't have to throw a temper tantrum. You don't have to cry about it. You don't have to bury it down deep. This is how you deal with those trials, get through to the next thing, and pass it on generation to generation. I could talk all day about the things that watching my mom as an entrepreneur has done for me now growing into my own profession. You can't replace that. That's like an education. Nobody can take your education away from you, and nobody can take the things that your mother instills in you away from you.
You're making me emotional, honestly, because quite seriously, because we as moms, we have another baby and that's our business. And sometimes I think because we love it so much too, we'll question ourselves, like, is this so self-fulfilling or am I doing the right thing for the people that I love the most? And what you're saying, is from your perspective, it's like, what is the saying? Earned, not learned, or something like that. Like what we take from our parents is like what we mirror. It's like on the tip of my tongue, but I can't think of it.
Aside from that, I feel like I went on more of a tangent from one way, but I learned so many things that are character qualities that I now have instilled in me. Aside from that, though, because my mom really put her heart and soul into these second children of her businesses and bringing in her circle, she also was given freedom in certain areas. And that is something that I think when you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you really kind of get past yourself and kind of have the blind guts to go for it and just jump head in, the payout on the other side, a lot of people think owning a business is easy and fun and anybody can do it. It's definitely not the case. But if you are able to put in that work and just all that effort behind it, you're surrounded by the right people. When you want to take time to be at your kids' games, you can do that. When you want to, for my mom, we were a caregiver for my grandmother for 12 years between the two of us. And so she was able to take time if she needed to go to the hospital with my grandma. She had that time because she had put in all of that work in the back end. So it allowed her that flexibility, and she had surrounded herself with people that supported her and were able to catch her. And a lot of that was Katie on the back end of that. And so I think that also ties right back to culture. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Because you're pouring your heart and soul into this. And if you have that mom guilt, number one, look and see all of the wonderful things that you're giving your children in the process and that you are teaching them and the opportunities that people that clock in for 9-to-5 jobs don't have. But number two, look at the community that you're building around them at the same time, because the support system that you don't realize that you're giving them a family that they wouldn't have had if you didn't take the jump.
I love that. Okay, I just thought of it. It's caught, not taught. What you leave with your kids is what they catch, not what you teach them. Anyway, I'm totally still butchering it, but let's sort of like kind of talk about the curation of this community, this ecosystem that you guys have built, right? So I'm just sort of like thinking of all the experiences I've personally had building my business and also obviously with the clients that we get to work with. But number one, what comes to mind is it baffles me how many women put up with employees who are not in alignment with them and they show up. I mean, I've heard things like, I feel like I'm walking in eggshells in my own practice. I have to like worry about what that person's going to say. I have to tiptoe past the front desk. There's volatility and drama and all these kinds of things. And it sounds to me like that doesn't fly in your practice. Like, I can't even imagine how it could.
There's always been I don't want to say like a no tolerance policy, but we don't do drama. So it might be, okay, well, I'm not happy with this person right now. So then I'm eventually going to go and talk to them. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, of course, but in the grand scheme of things, we know when someone isn't having a good day. When they're having a bad day, how can we continue to fill up their cup? And what does that mean? If that means when they come out of a room, we go in and we clean their room so that it's ready and they don't have to do that when they finish with their patient, then that's what we do.
Squash it where it's at.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do disagreements. We can absolutely talk about things that we don't agree on, but that doesn't need to get to a drama level. Mm-hmm. And we are the first ones to point out all of our flaws or things that we can work on. And we know that when we invite somebody into our family, they have to be a type A personality. Yes. That is, okay, there's a word and I can't remember it. I've been trying to remember it all day. It's not entrepreneur.
Ooh.
It's
something. It's like is what you keep saying.
Yes. It's like when you own every job that you do, but you're not necessarily
intrapreneur.
Oh my gosh. I've been trying to think of that word all day, but now I've lost my train of thought anyways, but
it's always been, even if you don't,
you have to take ownership of what you do to thrive in our circle or to really even survive in our circle. We're very upfront about that in interviews of talking through, okay, what kind of environment do you thrive in? Mm-hmm. If that doesn't match, we're very open and honest and give more of the, let us help you find your home. We might know somebody that you would fit better with. We are steamrollers when we go through life. Wow. And we want everybody to have that intrapreneur mindset because we have the entrepreneur mindset in every single day. And our nurse practitioner, she is not an owner, but has that mindset. And she has learned that she has to stay focused on that because that's how we all thrive together. So as a foursome of the women in the office, we constantly are owning what we're doing and working together. And if you don't fit that, you don't really survive with us, we will help you find your home elsewhere.
Yeah, well, we will help guide you. If your home isn't here, then we will help you find your new home. But I think that the best way, Delaney mentioned her Disney background, and there's a new Disney movie out called Elemental where there's the element of water. And when it's the water and he's trying to hold back the water from the damaged dam. And then he starts to get more water and then he's stronger and stronger. And then he's eventually able to stop, rebuild the dam from there and stop the overflow. And that's what we're looking for. We are the element of water. And if you're an element of water, we can absorb you right in and you're going to make us stronger and we're going to make you stronger. Yeah. So I think that's
but if you're not our element,
we
will work with you to find where you're at, but we will recognize it and help you to recognize it too.
Okay. So this
is the best way possible.
Back to our conversation at lunch, which is really one of the big things I wanted to talk about. And one of the women with us was saying, well, that's great, but like my employees are money driven and, they are all about their commission. And if somebody else comes in, it's all about like, they want to be compensated and rewarded in that way for the work that they do. And you all know I have my own opinion, but everybody has their own what they do in their business, right? And something to the fact of, I think we were in agreement in that situation that in some situations, commissions can actually kill culture.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that. So obviously you're coming, and kind of going back to that hiring process, because I think that's ultimately where it begins, right? It's like we get this all established. So Katie, I'd love from like your perspective of really building this business. Why did you choose not to commission employees? And how do you handle then part one and part two, then when an employee does, you do interview somebody who's really great and that's important to them. How do you handle that?
So commission is tricky, especially when it comes to medical, right? Because you technically cannot do commissions on medical treatments. So we're going to get that out of the way first. But
biggest suggestion for anybody, little sidebar here. If you don't have a lawyer or you haven't thought of that before, having a aesthetic medicine lawyer to go over and make sure that you are compliant in your state is huge. Not a medical lawyer, but an aesthetic medical lawyer.
Yeah.
Is huge. Okay, sorry. Go ahead and go.
So individual commissions are not going to help build your team culture. And if you truly want to build that team culture, you cannot say, if you, Delaney, do this, then you're going to be compensated on this. Our treatment plans are multimodality. We are looking at the body as a whole. So we are getting our entire team to work with the one patient walking through the door. So how can you truly partition out commissions if I talk to someone about a certain skincare and then, Delaney explained it in a different way and maybe the patient understood it better from Delaney. So then, yes. And you can never figure that out. And we aren't interested in figuring that out because that just messes with the team culture. So we are in the interview process up front, we want to see what motivates that person because most of the time, money is going to be one of the lowest things that's going to motivate someone. What's going to motivate you? It might be recognition. It might be, you can go to a training like where we met you.
It might be picking up your kids from school every day. And so you want your schedule to be structured that way.
Yeah.
You just never know what is going to motivate people. Is it going to be that freedom? Is it going to be recognition?
So we just put that out in the interview process and then also in a working interview. If you're coming in shadowing, you're seeing, okay, well, Delaney greeted you. Delaney put you into a room. Katie's going to go in and talk to you about this. Alicia's going to come in and do this. And then Delaney's going to come in and
check you out.
Yes. Yeah. So it's, it is from the very second, if you look at our social media, we do things as a team. Everything is as a team. It's not individualized. And so that is brought up front. So we never wanted to piecemeal any of it. Because that does initially mess with the culture.
I think aside from that too, because we are in a medical industry and a lot of people forget that aesthetics is medicine. It's aesthetic medicine. When you're dealing with that, are you compromising your integrity by suggesting something for $1 amount? Are you starting to get that selfish, you know what I'm saying? How would you explain? So, are you seeing it from a selfish perspective?
Yeah. You don't want to suggest something that a patient might not benefit from so that you can be compensated better in the end.
Yes. Yeah.
But what do you think about then all these, providers sending their team to sales training conferences?
That's not I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because people will say, I'm not a salesman. I'm not a salesperson. Okay, that's fine. But if someone is coming in and they are looking for an optimal aging treatment option, what are they going, what is going to be the best thing for them? It's more than likely going to be not only treatments in our facility, but the skincare that they take home. And so many times people have said, well, I'm not going to sell them skincare because I'm not a salesperson. However, this is going to enhance their results and give them more long-term results. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it just depends on how you look at it, how you approach it.
And we're in elective medicine. This isn't something that you're running through, your HSA or your insurance a lot of times. Sometimes it is, depending on where you're at in the different sectors. If you get more into wellness, that can get a little bit complicated. But for the most part, it's self-pay. So when you're thinking of it that way, you don't want to be in your patient's pockets saying they can afford that, or I'm not going to sell it. Or if I tell them to do that, I feel too salesy because that's just so much. You want to tell them what's going to get them full correction. What is, in your educated, well-trained opinion, what's going to give them the best results? Lay it all out for them. Our consultation process takes a lot of the salesiness out of it because we are writing them a medical treatment plan start to finish that includes their skincare. It includes, should they do laser treatments? Should they do medical weight loss, body contouring? Do they need medical facial treatments? Do they need injectables? I mean, we go all over. Vitamin injections. Is it really a hormone problem, or is it more of a vitamin deficiency problem? Can a vitamin D injection help solve that? So
we live in Ohio. Vitamin D3 can help everything. When you live in Ohio,
no sun. Send us help. That's why we have oceans in the background here. If you're watching this on YouTube, but we go through the whole process. It takes the salesiness out of it by making sure that we do a comprehensive consultation, and we try our darndest not to get into our patients' pockets, but suggest to the fullest correction. And then it's our patient's decision because it is a self-pay industry.
Yeah.
No, I get that. And probably a lot of those, like the most optimal results, for a patient on this treatment plan could be a number that maybe an employee hasn't never had to talk about before, would not necessarily spend on themselves. So I think that's great.
So readings like that do help with that too, where you don't feel as scary to mention it. Yeah, absolutely.
Why do you think so many practices in our industry get this wrong?
I don't want to over generalize everything, but I think a lot of people think that going into aesthetic medicine is just going to have all of this money coming at you, and people want to get out of, your bedside, 12-hour shifts, working at the hospital and things like that. And it's not like that. So
There's
I think
glamour to the idea of it.
There is a glamour. And if you do get these treatments done, some of them are at a higher price point. So then people think, well, if you're paying a higher dollar for these items, then you should be making more money. But it's just being real and honest. And I don't know why I think our industry has gone the way that it has. Yeah.
I think too, a lot of people, because it is so over glamorized, they look at it from a very materialistic point of view. And what I have learned from we have gone to so many different trade shows and seminars and learning opportunities, different trainings. Katie and I you'll find us together. So if you see us, always say hi.
Yeah.
A lot of people go into it with this persona of who they think that they should be in our industry versus going into it authentically. And I think that ties right back again to culture. Everything kind of stems back to who are you at your core and who do you want to be when you go out into the world? And that goes back into the treatment room, that goes everywhere, of just showing up authentically so that it doesn't go so sideways where you're having weird money talks and, everything steps back.
You also, as a business owner, practice manager, you just have to be upfront with people. Anyone that you hire, you have to be upfront with them. And sometimes I think because there is a lot of turnover historically, in this industry, and they think if they just throw more money at them that it's going to solve everything, and in the grand scheme of things, if you're unhappy, and money is not going to make it better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would not have stayed at my corporate job for $5.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No,
sometimes it's just not worth it.
I left to go to work harder and go into debt for a bit of time. So yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because too, like what I see are just really great, like providers who are just trying to do their thing. And then all of a sudden there's this just sort of accidental growth where like, I didn't know, I was just trying to like be good at what I do. And now all of a sudden I have this business and I need help. And so I think like it's almost a staffing out of desperation. And all of a sudden you have this experienced injector or you have this entitled someone that comes in and it's like, this is what I need. And I expect that. And I'll grow your business. And they're like, okay. And then all of a sudden it's sort of this passive, little by little, well, you mentioned the skincare. Well, I mentioned that. No, she did. And so it just becomes this toxic thing. That is not, I think, Katie, you said it so well. What's your goal? Is it to build culture or is it to build the individual? What is it what really is it? And you kind of have to just pick and you have to hold true to that. And I can imagine you probably interview a lot more people up front or you go through a longer process than maybe somebody who wouldn't to identify that.
Delaney said, we're type A. We are all type A. And in order for you to become our glob of water with us, type A is kind of what works for us. But also you have to have the same goals. You have to have the same core values. And you can really find that out the more you talk to someone.
Yeah. Our least favorite thing to do is to hire. Our least favorite thing. Because it is really hard. And the more, and the more you interview, the more desperate you feel to hire somebody on. And the more you feel like you're going to fall into that compromising your values or that core set that who you want to hire in, but you want somebody to fill it at the time. And I think that's when the decision comes of, are you going to compromise on your company culture and your environment, or are you going to wait it out? Are you going to do the job of two people so that you can keep your core strong and then build when it's the right time or when you're able to find that right person to fill that void? And that for us is our hardest thing that we need the most help with. we struggle the most with that for sure.
Well, everybody does, but it goes back to, when you look at what it takes to build a healthy business, it's leadership that can withstand that kind of adversity. That's why it's the mindset, and I think that's what's so special about what you guys have cultivated. It's, a collaboration of humans who are invested in their own personal development, which in turn benefits the business, right? Because then they're professionally more acute, they're more, they're smarter, stronger, more engaged, more part of the process of growing the business. But that may take longer than what your, girl crush on Instagram is showing you, and so that's tough. So there's then all those other feelings that come up of worthiness and all of that. So it's complex, but I think everybody has some element of that. But what I love about your story and what you're sharing is that there's just this unwavering commitment to committing to the culture and the team. And it's this sort of, I love the water analogy. That was such a great story, Katie, but like the element, right? I have to go see that movie. But it's where it's like, you're like us. And I have to say that I've seen this a lot of times and I've felt this myself, that I'm so like such a like big bad wolf and evil type A person that like I need like a lot of people who can like be a lot lighter on my team. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't mean you can't be like a lovely human, but a mentor of mine once said, she was like, we aren't a bunch of house cats around here, we're cheetahs. And so I joke with my team about that. And we'll like do the class.
Like, I like that.
That's like what it takes,
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So it's
my mom and Katie are always like, you're the light, bubbly, friendly person. We're going to send you out over there first. Katie's always like, I'm the gremlin that's just sitting over here, but we work well together.
Yeah, Delaney's the beautiful blonde, and I'm just the gremlin in the corner. So don't mind me. But
sometimes when you do have that fire behind you, it can come off very strong right off the bat. But it's who we are, and truthfully, that's our tribe. That's who we love to be around, is those strong spirits.
So what happens, let's say someone was asking you guys about your culture and was like, well, how do I know if I have a great culture? Like, and how does somebody identify that? Or what are some of the red flags that if like things are off, how do they keep a pulse on that?
The biggest suggestion is everybody has to self-reflect first. What do you personally want in a culture? And then once everybody has that self-reflection of what they want in a culture, then you can come together and see how can we build a culture together and meet everybody's needs, but then also make the business successful and profitable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's right from the very beginning when you are figuring out what your culture is going to be. Write a love letter to your business of what you want it to look like and what you want it to feel like. And truthfully, I feel like culture, the closest thing that you can convey culture to is a feeling. So if you feel like something is off, if you feel like the balance is off, if you feel like there's just a negative energy around you, try to dissect that into more of like those micro levels of where do we think that that's coming from? Mm-hmm. Is that a certain team member that feels off that we can help? Is that a certain service that's throwing us off? What is bringing that to us? Is it the clientele that we have? I think that's a lot of what culture can be, is who are you attracting into your doors and who are you allowing in? A lot of us don't think through who are our clientele, and that can throw off the mix too, because if your clientele aren't matching up with who your providers are, it's not as light and airy of a family meeting as it could be if you're trying to attract a certain clientele. So more of writing that love letter to who do you want to be as a practice? Who do you want to attract to you as employees, as clientele, and just breaking it down into all those little sections so that you know where it's stemming from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. And so like almost like the leader decides what the culture should be and hires to that, and then helps the employees identify how they are a part of it and how they're in alignment with that vision.
And stay in alignment.
Yeah. So what would you say then now, if someone's listening and they're like, well, too late for me, like this sounds great, but it's not possible for me, or I've got this situation, like how would you, what would you offer to somebody who wants to turn things around? Where should they start?
Yeah, I'll kind of go off of what you say.
So I will say, as wonderful as we have made it sound like, there are always ebbs and flows. And do we ever figure it out? Are we year 6, year 7 in? I'm going to say year 7 in.
Yeah, going on 8.
I would say it took us to year 4 or 5 before we got it figured out. We went through 3 or 4 employees where not only were they not a good fit, but it was turning into a volatile situation if we did not figure it out. So if you're in a place where you feel like you were walking on eggshells, or it feels like I'm going to lose my entire business over this one person, what can I do to salvage this? There is hope. You can make it through.
Yes.
You can speak to us. There are always ebbs and flows, but you have to make the decision to make a change and move in the right direction. And as soon as you identify what that problem is and you decide that you're going to move a certain direction, stick to it. Don't let the people around you pull you and tell you. There's always going to be that tension as you are making that change as a leader. Truthfully, I think there's a lot of times where my mom and Katie will say, we're going to do this. And I'm like, what the heck? Why are we doing that? But as leaders, that's your job, is to come up with those ideas and push through it and stay true to your vision and not lose sight of that and get through the growing pains of it. But it is worth it, and it is never too late to completely turn your practice around from start to finish, whether that's clients or whether that's employees that you have.
And you can help them transition into, if they aren't the right fit for you, you can help them transition to where they are a better fit.
Yes. And that is a really light and wonderful thing that we have all learned over the years, is how to make that transition so that everybody is thriving the most. So even that employee that doesn't necessarily mesh with you the best, how can you help them further their career? Yeah. And it's okay if you're a stepping stone. Everything can be left where it's all rainbows and butterflies. We can keep it in the rainbows and butterflies.
It's like, it's an abundance mindset, right? It's because I think we have to be okay. Everyone should be where they fit. And I see, especially with fast growing companies, like all of a sudden that employee, like, oh my gosh, can't keep up, can't do it. It's like, well, we have to expect everybody to grow as fast as you're growing or continue to change every year with the company. You know, it's like, well, I've had 300% growth year over year, and I don't know why that employee isn't figuring it out. You know, it's like, okay, maybe it's time for you to let them loose. Yeah. So this is kind of my last question to this point, because I know someone's asking it in their head. What if your bad egg is your top revenue producer in your company?
You have to, I think that you have to weigh the options of, is it toxic to, is your bad egg so toxic to your culture that if you help that bad egg move on, can you rebuild your culture, which will in turn make everybody a top producer together? So do you want to single out one person, even if they are that top producer? Well, why are they that top producer? Why isn't everybody else in a line with that top producer?
Oh, wow. Oh, hey girl.
Yeah. So look at how can you add training opportunities to who aren't the top producers, and encourage that bad egg to go to a different place.
Wow.
And weigh your options of, can you handle the loss temporarily to build up the culture and invite somebody that is the perfect fit? Is cutting them loose and encouraging them to find somewhere where they are going to thrive better than where they are currently, is that going to make room for somebody that is going to help you grow and take you to the next level, but match your culture at the same time? That's
gosh, my stomach. It's so scary.
That's the hardest thing.
Yeah. It's like leaving a marriage, a bad marriage or something. That's like, okay, well, and bad example, but if you're in a relationship, a toxic relationship, but it's the known, my dad was abused as a kid, and I asked him, why didn't you tell somebody? Like, why did you just keep getting beat up? And he was like, because I knew what to expect. Where was I going to go? Just be with a stranger and leave, and that was just, it's the known. Even the terrible known is more comfortable sometimes for people than the open space or potential of what could possibly happen. So I could feel my stomach in knots just like thinking about it, but yeah, I think
everyone's worst nightmare. That's worse than hiring.
Truly, but this has been so helpful. I mean, I just think like it's, I have worked with I saw this trend, I have worked with business owners who build out their compensation structures and their plans, like all in different ways. And I have found over and over again that the ones who just decide that everyone goes in and is rewarded as a team, is they have way less turnover. They just in general have a happier culture and less turnover. Now, how does that directly impact, ultimately how the success of the business? I mean, I guess that's again goes to, what is your definition of success? What are you measuring, right? Is it just the number, or is it how or is it your personal life? Is it your team? And is it, how you're growing within the business? I mean, there's different pillars to really evaluate. And I think sometimes they're there, but we're not measuring them, right? Like
because how can you?
Yeah.
Those are things that you can't measure, but I think that the things that we can measure are the fact that since 2021, we have not had anyone want to leave. We have continued to grow and improve our culture, and we choose to spend time not only inside of work, but also outside of work as well.
Together. Yeah. That's true. Building.
Okay. So you know, Delaney, I'm going to get so many calls about this podcast, and someone is going to say, how do I go and shadow this onboarding? Like they're going to want to come shadow and look at your culture and this onboarding, Disney process as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
How do we recreate this? I think
I'm more than willing to help anybody that wants to know about it. So I am an esthetician by trade, also a skin expert within our practice. I do have that Disney training. I worked for them all the way through college and on to now, and it really has made a huge impact for us. If anybody wants to pick our brains on anything, they absolutely can. We will also come to you if you would like and help with anything too. Yeah. So just let us know. We are always here. We are definitely community over competition. So there is no question. I'm sure there's probably a question somebody can come up with that's off limits, but in my head, there's no question off limits. We are an open book.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this has been such an incredible conversation, like I had hoped for and anticipated. I got to have a like double version of the same conversation, but better, the next time. So I feel like we really got to pick up where we left off from Dallas. So I just want to thank you ladies for taking the time to share all of these insights. I'm so impressed and just so excited for you, for the growth that you've had. And I know for a fact that somebody listening to this is going to change things for them and really make an impact. So
thank you so much for having us.
So how can we send people, like where, someone wants to learn about you guys, where do they go?
Absolutely. So
BeyondSkinAesthetics.com is the fastest one. We have everything linked from there. Also at Beyond Skin Aesthetics on Instagram and on Facebook. And then my business Instagram is Delaney.aesthetics, and that's with an A. So Delaney.ae as we go.
Well, I cannot wait to see this you dynamic duo again at the next conference that we're all at together. And I just want to thank you ladies so much for joining me. And we'll talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Listen, leader, if you're vibing with me here, hang tight because I have a brand new resource for you. You are a successful, confident, powerful woman who just isn't into being average. No, you have a calling, and part of that calling is requiring you to level up. And I know that if you're working across the next $1 million milestone in your business, you need to be in the right circles. And perhaps that's why you found us. I'd love to invite you to join The Blueprint, a weekly resource for inspired, provocative thinkers who are taking this conversation to the next level. Get access to free business tools, podcast supplements, guideposts, and direct communication with me and my expert team. And of course, a masterfully curated circle of women making big moves and disrupting the status quo in aesthetics and wellness. You can link directly through the show notes or head to klcconsultants.com/blueprint. It's time to elevate. See you there, goddess.